Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Perkins Cadillac by John G. Hartness. Narrated by James Anderson Foster. 1. It all went to shit when the dork with the pissant mustache found me. I was sitting in Zeke's place, a blues bar in Memphis with cold beer, hot waitresses, and a clientele that didn't intrude on a man's God-given right to get drunk in peace. I wasn't drunk, though. It takes a lot to get me there, even with Zeke's high-octane enhanced beer, and I needed to keep my wits about me. I was working, after all. This night, working meant sitting at a small table in the rear of the bar with my back wedged into a corner and a clear view of the whole place laid out in front of me. Zeke's wasn't a huge joint, exactly 15 round tables bolted to the floor in very specific placements to make 3 pentacles around the bar, each with 5 chairs around them. You had to be in the place for a while and be seriously attuned to magical energy to see the pattern of the tables, and even more perceptive to catch the fact that the ceiling lamps were situated precisely above the tables, duplicating the lines of power on the floor. The layout, along with the silver filigree on the crown molding, the salt sprinkled along the baseboards, and the building's placement on the end of a pier sticking out over the Mississippi River, all combined to make Zeke's one of the most magically inert places I've ever been outside of a binding circle. I liked it that way. I'd had plenty of magic in my life for a while and was looking for some place to decompress. When an imp in Georgia who owed me a favor told me about this blues joint in Memphis where nobody could cast spells, I decided it had been too long since I had some cool blues and smoking ribs, so I rolled north to Tennessee. Zeke knew who I was the second I walked in his silver-clad door, of course. It's been a minute since I didn't get recognized by most of the supernatural community, at least the power players. He glared at me the whole walk from the door to the bar stool, then slid a mug of dark foamy beer in front of me. "You're the one they call Reaper." "Yeah, that's been said once or twice." "You planning on causing any trouble in my bar?" "No." I didn't say anything else, and he didn't ask. That became one of my favorite things about Zeke, his ability to leave it the fuck alone. I sat on that bar stool drinking his homebrew like it was my job, and when the night came to a close, I paid my tab and asked if he knew any place warded that had vacancies. "How long you looking to stay?" "I don't know yet. Going to depend on if I find work and some place to stay." "I thought you were loaded." "Circumstances change." I didn't feel like telling this guy I just met that after returning from hell, I walked away from my money, my friends, my family, and the woman I loved because I was number 1 on Lucifer's shit list, and every demon in the material plane was going to be after me for the rest of my unnaturally long life. Even if he was a good bartender, I didn't unburden that easy. "I could use a bouncer," Zeke said, drying a pint glass with the towel hanging from his waist. I've been watching him clean the bar with that same towel for about 6 hours, so I really questioned the efficacy of his dishwashing at that point, but held my tongue. "Hey," protested a werewolf walking up behind my right shoulder. "You got a bouncer. Me." I raised a fist, bloodying the pup's nose, then got off my stool. I kicked him in the balls while his hands were clapped to his face, then planted a right on his temple when he doubled over. The werewolf dropped like a sack of flour and lay on the sawdust-covered floor, snoring little blood bubbles into the dirt. "I'll take it," I said. "Job come with a room?" Zeke grinned at me. "Downstairs. Door on the back wall of the storeroom. It ain't much, just a bed, a dresser, and a bathroom, but it's even more warded than the rest of the place, and there's a trap door that drops out into the river if things go sideways." He reached for a key ring hanging on a post behind the bar and tossed it to me. "We open at 4. Be sober by then." "I'm sober now," I said, picking up my backpack from the floor beside me. "Thanks." "Thank me after you live through a Saturday night," Zeke said with a grin. Some of the scraps in here are hell." "Pretty sure they're not," I said. I gave him a little wave over my shoulder as I walked to the stairs. He wasn't lying. The apartment was about as bare bones as anything I'd ever seen, but I'd slept in worse. The bed wasn't too lumpy, and while my feet hung off the end a little, and it wasn't my California king, it was fine. Zeke wasn't lying about the wards, either. The key granted me passage, but when I let my sight drop over my eyes like a veil, the whole room glowed with lines of red, green, and black. Anything coming into this room without a key would have to either be patient with a real talent for complex spellcraft, or more powerful than anything I'd ever faced. Well, almost anything. I sat on the bed and reached into my backpack, pulling out a cell phone and a folded picture. I double-checked the battery was still out of the phone and set it on the small dresser. Dresser was a pretty kind word for a stack of pressboard drawers that made IKEA look like Chippendale furniture. But it was enough to hold my spare pair of jeans, 4 pairs of socks, 4 shirts, and 4 pairs of underwear. Then I kicked off my Doc Marten boots, sat on the bed with my back and shoulders pressed to the wall, and stared at the picture of the dark-skinned woman with long brown curls, regretting every life choice that took me away from her until sleep finally claimed me around dawn. Since that night, I'd been a fixture at Zeke's, busting heads when I needed to, smoothing ruffled feathers when that was called for, making a dumb joke to diffuse a fight when that worked better. I was enjoying the work, enjoying the music, and even enjoying the people. Well, employees. People might be a bit of a strong word. Zeke's was a sanctuary, a place where all types of humans, monsters, and interdimensional beings could come in, have a drink, and be protected by the rule of don't start nothing, won't be nothing. That meant you have a lot of supernaturals on the payroll. There was me with my part vampire, sliver of a demon origin. There was Zeke, and I wasn't sure what exactly he was, but I had a sneaking suspicion there was a pair of white wings tucked away somewhere under his faded AC/DC t-shirt. Angelique was the succubus waitress who let her tail snake out from under her miniskirt, and wasn't shy about using it to slap patrons who let their hands wander from their long necks to her long legs. The house band were all werecats of one breed or another, from house cat to tiger. Their hearing and reflexes made them the perfect group to improvise together, and they made a game out of trying to push somebody off the beat. I'd never seen anybody win so much as a point. Then there was Henry, the werewolf I'd decked to get my job. He turned into a pretty good second once his nose healed, but since I didn't need much backup, he spent most nights hauling kegs up the stairs for Zeke. As far as anybody but Zeke and the rest of the staff knew, I was Eddie Nolan, a half-fae from Manchester hiding out from the Winter Court. I grew out my hair and beard and worked pretty hard at burying Quincy Harker deep in my past. It was the best way I could come up with to protect the people I loved back in North Carolina. It only took me one fight to prove that I was enough of a badass to bounce at the preeminent bar for monsters, demons, and angels in West Tennessee, even without my spells. Yeah, my magic wouldn't work in the bar. With all the wards, silver, and salt in the room, it was hard to touch any magic at all. Then, being over running water completely cut me off from being able to tap a ley line or anything else. The good news was that nobody else could conjure so much as a sparkle either, so at least we were on pretty even footing. I was standing at one end of the U-shaped bar, keeping an eye on the place, when I saw Angelique spin around and belt a big bastard in the face with her tail. The point of the appendage left a long red line down the dude's face, so I could tell from across the room that she was pissed. Angie has incredible fine motor skills even with her tail, so if she drew blood, she meant to, and that meant that Big Boy had crossed a line. I pushed off the wall and waved Henry off. Now that I saw the guy on his feet, I pegged him for a low-level soldier demon, no deeper than third circle. He'd be strong but stupid and not fast enough to be a real problem. Unless he was, then I'd want Henry to be able to jump in and back me up. I hoped he could get all that from a hand wave and a head shake, but I wasn't holding my breath. Henry's strong, but he ain't the sharpest knife in the drawer. I heard Angie cursing the guy in poorly pronounced Enochian as I walked up, which sounds a lot like someone gargling with lava while skipping rope. I held up a hand to stave off the flow of profanity before she managed to accidentally curse one of us, and she pointed up at the guy. "This asshole decided to run his hand up my skirt." The demon looked down at me, which doesn't happen all that often, but this behemoth was taking full advantage of Zeke's high ceilings with his 7-foot frame. He flashed me a grin, showing me a couple of short fangs in the process. I just wanted to see if the tale was real or if she was just a poser. "You couldn't have just asked?" I stopped in front of him and hooked my thumbs in the front pockets of my jeans. She might lie. Or you might see the yellow eyes with vertical pupils and see she's really got abyssal parentage. Or you could try for a free ass grab and hope she just let it slide. That's not how it works. I turned to Angie. "How much is his tab?" 36. That's his third Patron with a Corona back. I looked back to the dumbass demon. "Drop $50 on the table and get out. You're out for a week." "Fuck you." He didn't move. I didn't expect him to. "So you're the guy, huh?" "What guy?" "The guy the regulars decided should try out the new bouncer and see if I'm as tough as Henry." "Fine. I knew it was coming, just kind of hoped it wouldn't be on my first night. But let's get it out of the way." I didn't bother talking anymore. I just made a knife edge out of my fingers and jabbed them into his solar plexus. The great thing about demons taking on human physiognomy is that they have all the human weak points, too. He doubled over, clutching his gut, and I swung for the fences, putting everything I had into an uppercut meant to end the fight in one massive punch. It didn't. It broke a couple of bones in my hand and turned dumbass's nose into paste, but he just sat down on his ass in the floor, shook his head twice, blew a giant bloody booger onto the floor, then grinned up at me. "Let's dance, motherfucker," he said, springing to his feet like I'd never laid a finger on him. Looked like my new job wasn't going to be all glitz and glamour after all. 2. The demon lowered his head and charged at me, obviously intending to break my ribs against the bar. I disappointed him by being somewhere else when he got to where I was standing. I look human. If you run into me in the streets, I just look like a normal guy. Maybe a little more world-weary around the eyes, and my hair never really stays put, but an average-looking tall guy with a fair amount of lean muscle packed onto his frame. Nothing about the picture says that I'm way faster than a human and a lot stronger, and since I haven't been to Memphis in a long time, it's no surprise most of the folks in the bar, including Dumbass, had no idea who I was. Dumbass slammed into the bar head first, rattling a few glasses and dumping a couple of empty beer bottles onto the floor. None of the patrons spilled so much as a drop, having all picked up their drinks when they saw the scraps starting up. Zeke attracts a certain clientele, and if you're of that clientele, you expect that 2 out of 3 visits are going to end up with a fight. If you lay there for a couple of minutes pretending to be knocked out, you can fake a concussion when you get up, and then you can leave without the shame of a human kicking your ass because you knocked yourself out. I've never seen a bear that didn't need poking, and this one was no exception. Sometimes when I set outside myself and look at my behavior objectively, I wonder how the hell I've lived this long. Shit like this is why I don't look at myself objectively very often. Dumbass didn't answer, but he didn't stay down either. He backed out from under the bar and stood up as he turned to face me. There was a trickle of blood running down his forehead where he busted himself open on the bar, but that didn't seem to bother him in the least. "I'm going to kill you, asshole," he growled, his voice low and scary. At least, scary if you haven't heard really scary shit in your life, like friggin' Lucifer. Since coming back from hell, I found I'm pretty scare-proof. He took a step closer, cracking his knuckles. "I'm going to rip off your head and shit down your neck while I skull fuck your throat. you worthless piece of human excrement. I'm going to feed you your own spleen and then shove your teeth up your ass one by one with my big toe. I'm going to—" I held up a hand. "Look, buddy, as absolutely poetic as your imagery is, are you going to throw a punch so I can beat your head in, or are you just going to talk about what a badass you are? Because I've got the Sunday Times crossword puzzle over on the bar, and I'm really struggling with a 5-letter word that means 2-in-1 utensil. So if you're going to do something, fucking do it already, or get the fuck out of here." That did the trick. His eyes went red, and that's not a metaphor. His eyes literally turned red and started to glow. That's how I knew he was pissed off beyond all reason, which is exactly where I needed him to be. This time he came at me straight up with his arms low and out to the sides. He was looking for a bear hug, which would do lots of unpleasant things to my organs. The natural thing to do in that kind of fight is to go low and try to get under his arm, then attack from behind. So I did the unnatural thing and ran right at him. I had about 10 feet to get up to speed, and I came straight at him full tilt, leaping from 6 feet away to slam a knee right into his already busted forehead. That trickle of blood was like a bullseye, and after I planted my knee in his face and vaulted over his head to land on the bar, I dropped an elbow that would make Dusty Rhodes proud right on the crown of his head. Dumbass dropped to one knee but didn't go all the way down. That was fine with me because now I was on the floor behind him, so I just wrapped my arms around his throat in a sleeper hold, trying to pinch off the carotid arteries and put him out in a matter of seconds. Unfortunately, this put me once again between an angry demon and 1,000 pounds of highly polished oak. The demon reared back, slamming my spine right into the edge of the bar, and my arms flew off his neck. He spun around and threw a punch that would absolutely have laid me out cold if I hadn't dropped straight down to my knees when I bounced off the bar. I heard the solid whunk as his fist hit the bar, then a howl as the pain in his fist registered. Normally, in a fight like this, I'd use magic to make a shield, or transmute my skin into living metal, or just throw a fireball at the demon. But magic didn't work in Zeke's, so I was on my own. Well, mostly on my own. I still had the brass knuckles in my back pocket, which I slipped on right before I punched Dumbass right in the side of the knee. The crunch that came from the joint was satisfying, but the hammer blow to my shoulders that followed it was definitely not. He dropped both fists onto my shoulder blades with enough force to hammer a fence post home in one shot, and I sprawled face first onto the scuffed wooden floor. I smacked my nose a good one when I hit, and as I scurried away from Dumbass's grasping mitts, I noticed what a good job the sawdust did of soaking up the blood. Guess that's why Zeke bought the shit in 200-pound drums. I scooted through the demon's legs, racking my brain for a next move, but I wasn't quite fast enough. He grabbed one ankle and pulled me backward, and as I moved through his legs from back to front, my next move presented itself. Dangled itself right in front of me, as it were. Yeah, I punched the demon in the balls. What the hell else was I supposed to do? He was bigger than me, stronger than me, and it looked like he was a better fighter than me. Something about thousands of years in the pits being better combat training than a little more than a century fighting humans and monsters on Earth. I didn't have a lot of mustard on my punch, but it didn't take much, because I slammed my brass-encased fist up into the junction between his legs, and I felt something soft get a lot softer when I hit. Dumbass screamed this horrific high-pitched sound that reminded me of the lambs in that Hannibal Lecter movie. He let go of my ankle and clapped both huge hands to his junk, then dropped straight down to his knees, right on top of my face. I went from having a demon beating the hell out of me to having a demon's taint writhing on my chin, and I seriously wasn't sure which was worse. I managed to heave the screeching demon off me and stagger to my feet, swearing silently that I was going to boil my face before I went to bed. "You give up, fuckwit?" I gasped. Dumbass looked up at me, then a corner of his mouth twitched up, and he held up his right hand. With a grin spreading across his blood-covered face, he extended his middle finger to me, then rocked forward onto his toes and sprang to his feet. You think that's the first time I've been hitting the balls, human? In the pits, they used to slam our dicks with spiked hammers every morning just to see who would cry. That's... Shit, dude. I'm sorry. A puzzled look crossed his face, and he cocked his head to the side like a confused puppy. Huh? I said I'm sorry. I didn't know anything about what you went through growing up. That's awful, man. No wonder you can't keep your hands to yourself. You never had any positive male role models growing up, so you never learned how to treat women. Or anyone, for that matter. I bet you've never even had a real friend, have you? The sadness in my eyes radiated through the room as I channeled every tiny bit of empathy I could dig up for the behemoth in front of me. Friend? Yeah, I said, smiling a little. You know, somebody you can just hang out with, have a beer with, go to a game with, that kind of thing. I saw a glimmer of hope spark in the demon's eyes. You want to be my friend? You want to hang? Fuck no, asshole. I don't hang out with demons. His guard and his hands were both down, so I threw every single thing I had into a huge right hook and slammed my brass-wrapped fist into the side of his jaw. I heard the bone crack like a rifle shot and watched his dumbass spun in a full circle before sitting straight down on his ass right in front of me. His eyes spun in lazy circles for a second before they focused on me. I leaned down and grabbed him by the throat. In case you missed the memo, I'm goddamn Eddie Nolan, and I'm the new bouncer. Now keep your goddamn hands off the waitstaff, don't start shit with the other patrons, and don't be a dick to the bartender. That way we don't ever have to have this conversation again. Then I took a step back and kicked dumbass in the side of the head as hard as I could. He was unconscious before he hit the floor. I straightened up and looked around the room. Everybody hear that shit? Nobody said anything. I asked you motherfuckers if you heard my name. A few mumbled affirmatives and a bunch of nodding. Good. Now you just saw what I can do in here without my weapons and without my magic. So if any of the rest of you want to step up like dumbass here and learn exactly why Zeke hired me to keep the peace in this shithole, now's your fucking chance. I stood there looking around the crowd, but nobody looked like they felt particularly froggy. Good, I said, turning to the bar. Henry, haul this dumb bag of shit out the back door and leave him in the alley to sleep it off. Take $50 out of his pocket to cover his tab, but not $1 more. I raised my voice a little to make sure it carried through the room. I find out anybody from in here rolled him while he was out, they'll get the same treatment. He got his ass kicked. He doesn't need to get robbed, too. I slipped onto a bar stool, keeping my face turned to the front so only Zeke could see the winds as I bent around my broken ribs. Everclear, in a pint glass. Zeke stared at me. It's medicinal, I said. My fucking ribs are killing me. Okay. He poured me a pint of straight grain alcohol. It tasted like jet fuel, but after the first 3 gulps, the edge came off the razor blades in my midsection. I looked up at Zeke. Anybody looking like they want to start anything? Nope. Everybody's on their best behavior. Good. I don't know if I could do that again tonight. I didn't have to. Not that night. There were plenty of people who stepped up wanting a piece of the Reaper, but that came in time. All in all, it was a pretty good gig. Not good enough to make me forget about what I walked away from, but good enough that I could go to sleep without a liter of liquor or half a dozen Xanax. Until it all went to shit, like it always does. 3. The dork looked shit-scared when he walked into Zeke's, spinning around like his own shadow was going to take a bite out of his ass. He was a skinny little guy, mid-40s, with his tie loosened and sweat staining the armpits of the pale blue dress shirt he wore. His khakis and loafers looked as out of place in Zeke's as a priest's cassock, but after a cursory glance to evaluate the potential threat, everybody in the bar went back to quietly ignoring the rest of the room. Dork made it to the bar unmolested, managing to step over the outstretched foot of the 20-something imp who liked to start shit for no reason. I was glad the new guy made his dexterity check, because I was just getting into a new chapter in the John Scalzi audiobook I had playing on my phone and didn't feel like breaking up a fight in the middle of a space battle. Of course, all my hopes for an easy night went out the window when Dork walked right up to me. He stared at me with hope written across his face in letters almost as big as the giant "fuck me" written on his forehead. He motioned for me to take out my earbuds, and I motioned for him to suck my dick. His brow furrowed. He repeated his mime of pulling my earbuds out, and I repeated sticking my tongue into the side of my cheek while moving my fist back and forth toward my chin. "I need to talk to you," he said, his nasally voice drowning out Will Wheaton's dulcet narration. Figuring my audiobook was well and truly shitted at this point, I took my time pulling my phone out of my pocket, pressing pause, and taking my headphones out. I slipped the phone and earbuds into a pocket and glared down at the man. "What the fuck do you want?" His jaw trembled a little, which was almost the response I wanted. It wasn't as good as him turning around and leaving, but if he insisted on sticking around, being terrified of me was a good second option. A little bead of sweat appeared at his left temple and traced a line down the side of his face, making it all the way to his jaw before he spoke. "I hear you're the guy around here who can fix things." I raised an eyebrow. "Like a toaster? Call Home Depot, fuckwad." I turned to the bar. "Zeke, hook me up with a Ciroc and cranberry, will ya?" Dork leaned in closer to me than I really want anyone I don't know to be and whispered, "I need help." I put a hand in the middle of his forehead and pushed him back, gently, for the first offense. "You get that close to me again without an express invitation, and you're going to need medical attention. I don't know what you've heard, and I don't know who you've heard it from, but I'm a bouncer. People start shit, I finish it. People paw at the waitstaff, I break their hands. People come in with fake IDs, I throw them into the Mississippi. That's it. I'm not a mercenary, I'm not a bodyguard, and I'm sure as hell not the fucking equalizer. Now go away before you really irritate me." The dumping kids into the river bit was true. Zeke built a trap door in the back wall of the bar that opened out onto the water, and I tossed out anyone who came in with a fake ID. It also made a handy escape route for more than one of our sketchier customers when the local constabulary came looking for 'em. Too bad for said sketchy customers that Memphis PD knew about the bolt hole and often stationed a boat cop right under it when they came by to serve a warrant. Dork looked up at me and said, "You might not be a mercenary, but you are the Reaper. You're the deadliest thing in Tennessee next to cancer, and I need that kind of badass. I've got money, and I'm not afraid to spend it." He pulled a roll of cash out of his pocket and flashed it in my face. I saw the 100 in the corner of one bill, but covered his hand with my own in a flash. "Don't flash that much cash in here if you want to make it back to your car, jackass. This might be a sanctuary, but the pier outside isn't. Now, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about with this Reaper shite, but my name's Eddie, and I just came over here because shite got a little too hot back home with the Sealy Court. It was bugger out of Manchester for a century or two, or end up with a cold iron Prince Albert, so I picked America. Now, piss off before I get annoyed." I reached out to the bar and took a long sip of my vodka cranberry, looking at Dork over the rim of my glasses the whole time. Holding on to the accent after all these years wasn't easy, but I still managed a passable one when I had to. He didn't leave, but he did take a step back and put his cash away. He motioned over to Zeke. "Another one for my friend here, and a Macallan 18 for me. Neat." "Only way to drink it," Zeke said. $30. The little man's eyes bulged, and he coughed like something was caught in his throat. $30? Are you fucking high?" "I assume you're buying both of Eddie's drinks, and Macallan isn't cheap, friend." The stress Zeke put on the word friend made it clear they weren't. "Oh, yeah, that's fine. Keep the change." He dropped 2 20s on the bar and turned back to me. "Do 2 drinks buy me 5 minutes?" You keep buying drinks, you could sit on that stool all night for all I care, I said, pushing my earbuds back in and pulling my phone out of my pocket. But I'm done listening to your ass. And I...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?